You're welcome to my YouTube channel once again. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section, click on the notification bell to be notified whenever I post a new video. Like I said, today we are going to be looking at the bass clef and we'll then move on to what we call the grand staff. Yesterday we looked at, in the last class we looked at the treble clef and the lines and the spaces of the treble clef. We also said the treble clef is called the G clef or the right hand clef. Today we are looking at the bass clef, and the bass clef is used in playing the lower part or the lower pitch notes in your keyboard, that is from the middle C downwards. Now your bass clef is also called the F clef because it is drawn from line F. The bass clef is used to write parts, vocal parts, for the tenor and the bass singers. Now let's look at the lines of the bass clef and their names. We have G, B, D, F, A for the lines, and to remember that, I would encourage you to use something like this. Good boys deserve Fanta always. Good boys deserve Fanta always. So whenever you see a note placed here, you know you're supposed to play your G low, your G 2 octaves below the middle C. Then you can play B on this, D, F, A. Now the height or the specific position of the note will tell you the pitch even in the bass clef. So your bass clef covers close to 3 octaves. We are going to be looking at that in detail subsequently. For the spaces, we have A, C, E, and G. A, C, E, and G. To remember that, you can use all cows eat grass. All cows eat grass. So these are the other names of our bass clef, the left hand clef or the F clef. Now we talked about 2 types of clef in the last class. I've explained the treble and I've also explained the bass clef. 2 of them can be brought together in perfect harmony using what we call a brace. A brace is like a tie that binds or combines the treble clef with the bass clef. The grand staff is what makes a pianist who he is. Now the grand staff is a representation of what the right hand and the left hand need to be doing when you play a piece on the keyboard. So, or on the piano, on the keyboard, let's put it that way. Then you have your brace here. Without the brace, this is not going to be called the grand staff. Now, in the middle of the grand staff, you have your middle C. Now, the middle C tells us the point where you have that separation, linear separation between the treble and the bass clef. But before we go further, I should tell you this, that the grand staff is limited. What do I mean? We have 5 lines and 4 spaces on the treble clef, 5 lines and 4 spaces on the bass clef. That is how many? 18 notes altogether. Then we have middle C here, making how many? 19 notes. But if you take a good look at your keyboard sometimes contains as much as 88 keys on the keyboard. Some are 66, some are in the range of 71, 72. 3 and 4 octave keyboards even have less than that. So how do we accommodate more notes since our grand staff is limited to just 19 notes? 9 on the treble, 9 on the bass, 1 in middle C. Now there is a concept that helps us to get that right, and that is called ledger lines. Let's move to the next part of the board where we have that part of the lesson. Now ledger lines are lines drawn above or below a staff. Now if you look at this, the treble, you have the treble staff here. There are some notes above it. We call those notes ledger notes, or by the time they fall on lines, we call them ledger lines. Now below that, you also have ledger lines here. Below the bass clef, you have ledger lines. So what ledger lines are used for is for extending the pitch, the range of notes that can be played through reading staff or sight reading. So normally your treble clef stops at F, which is a line. The next should be a space, which is G, followed by A, which is the first ledger line. If you take note, I put a line across A, showing that that is our first ledger line. B comes next. C is the second ledger line. We put two lines across to indicate that that is our second ledger line. The same goes for the ledger line below the bass clef. G is your lowest note on the bass clef. Before G you have F. E would be your first ledger line below the bass clef. So you see one line drawn. D before that. C contains two. What you notice is that the lower and the second ledger line below the bass clef and the second ledger line above the treble clef are one and the same. I don't know if you've taken note of the fact that your bass clef and your treble clef are having just a difference of a third. What do I mean by that? If you count from one treble line on both clefs to the other, you are having a space of a third. What do I mean by this? We see we have C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. A third is simply saying you're moving like 1, 2. That's 1, 2, 3 notes. So if you look at this, when you have E and you move to G, you've moved a third. So let's look at this. E to G. Your G is a third away from your E. Now that third now happens to be your first note here. So the third of your first note in the treble clef is this. So your treble clef is having notes a third lower than the bass clef, while the bass clef is having notes a third higher than the treble clef. This helps you to memorize them a lot. So your second line here is your first. Your third line here is your second. Your fourth line here is your third. Your last line here is your fourth. While your first ledger line here happens to be the fifth. I believe we are getting something from this. So in the next lesson, we'll begin to talk about the notes that we place on the staff, especially the grand staff. Please don't forget to follow this lesson. To follow the series sequentially. If you missed the last one, I'll leave a link on this in the description of this particular video for you to be able to watch the previous one so you don't miss out on anything. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Bye. Love you.